Welcome back to another episode of The Whole Note. Today we will be discussing Cabaret by Kendra and Ebb. And with me, I have a very wonderful guest, Sean Michael Frazier. Sean, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, for those who might not know me, I am Sean. I guess some important things to know is that I've been doing theater since '97, which I've been doing it for a long time. It's what I went to school for. I love performing. I love the stage. I love all aspects of it. I am now, I have taught yoga for 10 years. That has been a huge passion of mine, and I've been starting real estate. So that's kind of a little generalization. Um, I love this show, which you will obviously get to know in this podcast. And I'm just excited to be here. So thank you, Kenny, for having me.
No problem. I mean, Sean has played the MC in this production before. So I figured who else to talk about Cabaret with besides Sean Michael Frazier?
I do have a little history with it. Yeah, I performed it. I can't believe it was almost 10 years ago. And I actually have my original key from the show. I still have it. One of the mini gifts that the producer Kathy Mead, who actually saw today, gave me as a memento. So
now let's talk about the show just a little bit, just to sort of sum it up. So this show takes place during the World War II time in Berlin.
Well, actually, it takes place pretty much like the period before what we know as the Holocaust and World War II kind of started.
Yeah.
When you get to the end of the show, it clearly, and especially in this rendition, this revival, the 1998 with Alec Cumming and Tasha Richardson that we're going to be dissecting, really made kind of more of a point of. But yeah, it takes place in that time period in Germany. It originally follows an American writer who moves to Germany and kind of just runs into Sally Bowles, who is this British woman who's kind of touring Europe, just kind of finally figuring out who she is and what she wants, and really discovering herself. All of this centers around a Kit Kat club, which is where the MC comes in, and that's where Sally works, is where she performs. And Cliff, the main protagonist, the male lead, one of the male leads, frequents a lot. So it becomes kind of the main story is of Sally and Cliff's relationship. And then there is a subplot where Sally rents a room from this not hotel.
I'll say like a hostel.
There you go. That's the word. At a hostel. And the lady who owns the hostel, she starts to become the subplot in the sub story, which is the story I absolutely love. And it's kind of her relationship with this man who is a fruit seller. And they're also more of a highlighted point for that Jewish community, and again for the rise of the Holocaust with the Nazis. And they kind of have that main storyline, but you follow Cliff and Sally through the rise of the Nazis. That's how Act 1 ends, and you really get this, and again, especially in this revival, this clear picture that Hitler and the Nazi regime are kind of like at the beginning peak of the story in this time of history that we are all very familiar with. And the MC fits in because he's the main, of course, the MC at the Kit Kat Club. And what I love about him is he gives social commentary on everyone's story. So that's how the Kit Kat Club and these type of numbers connect with the club. And you also, and again, especially with this revival, you get more of an identifier of who the MC character is and more input of what his character is going through as well. So yeah, that's kind of a nice generalization without getting into specifics.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Sean, which is great because we're about to get into probably going to be the longest part of this podcast, which is the song by song breakdown. Yes. Now, the show opens on such a flurry that you're just like, whoa, okay. And that's Willkommen.
You know,
go ahead.
Yeah, I have to say, the first big point right here, which is going to be a recurring theme throughout this podcast, is Cabaret was actually the first modern show to not have an overture. Like the show starts with the drum roll and then the cymbal. That was the first show to ever cut out this big dramatic da 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 da. It completely just erases it. So there is that shock factor. So they built that in on purpose.
And with Vilcom, you are introduced to the MC, who is very flamboyant and very just, everybody wants to be him and everybody wants to be with him.
Yeah, he's definitely has, especially with Alan Cumming and what he was able to bring to it, definitely has like this dominatrix type of personality to him. He's like, he's in charge, he's sexual, and you meet these people in life who, gay, straight, whatever your orientation is, they're just ooze charisma and ooze sexuality. And
And
that's what,
confidence. So
yes,
much
confidence, another good word. Yeah. And that's the MC.
And with the MC, you're introduced to pretty much the players of the show, which is the Kit Kat girls and the Kit Kat boys. And you're automatically thrown into the show, and you're automatically thrown into like just the theme of the show and its overall message. Well, not really overall message, but just like the undertone of just sexuality and free and embracing.
I think what this production does really well, and I'll get more into it later on in this podcast, is that this revival really dove into that grunge, that sexy, that boudoir. Alan Cumming is just in a tank, and the suspenders are actually here and there and everywhere. And that was the first time they were really able to push that envelope. And what I love about Vilcom, what this number now does, is it gives the audience an instant connection to the world. It gives it's to the outside world of Germany during this time. It was very dirty, very raunchy, very sexual, very poor, very dirty, and raunchy. And that's what I love about this. It just throws the audience into this world that is pre World War II.
Now, right after this, there's a mini scene where you're introduced, I want to say, to Sally Bowles.
Yes. So through this number, he introduces the Kit Kat girls. There was focus thrown on the Kit Kat boys, which really didn't get a lot of show in previous revivals. And there is a note of Sally Bowles. So you instantly are introduced to, this is where Sally Bowles works. This is how she's connected to this cabaret.
And then right after this, you're introduced to Cliff. And immediately when you see Cliff, you're just like, oh, he's like the boy next door. He has this innocent charm about him. That go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. Cliff is kind of this naive character who's looking to find himself. He's trying to write the next great book. So he's, and that's in a lot of stories, a lot of plays where it's writers on this grand adventure trying to write their first story or this first coming out story or whatever story it is. And yeah, Cliff as a character has evolved so much through all these revivals, and this revival, I think he was the most free in his character depiction and expression.
Which is funny, like as you mentioned, like a lot of shows talk about or have that one character that's constantly looking for themselves. Well, the podcast before this one is Passing Strange, which is about a guy who's trying to find himself in Amsterdam and in Berlin of all places. So it's kind of fun that it comes full circle. And then later on, we're going to talk about Pippin, which is another show where the main character is trying to find himself. And at the end, he ends up not really finding himself, but just finding a finding his corner of the sky to make it a pun. And with this, we are. When does Ernst come in? Ernest. He comes in like right after this.
Yeah. So the next, I'm trying to pull up. There's so many songs in this show.
Because the next song is "So What," but like there's so much that happens before that.
Yeah. So Ernst comes in. I lost that page. Ernst comes in actually a little bit later. You're first introduced to Sally and oh my gosh, what is that lady's name?
Oh, Fräulein
Oh,
Schneider.
Fräulein. Yes. So that's who you're introduced first, and you're introduced to her story. And the scene that plays out is Sally getting her apartment.
Yes, there we go.
So that's what kind of happens there. So that's where you're introduced to Fräulein and her song "So What," which is going into again setting the mood for the time. You know, people had to work for what they earned, and it really wasn't a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, Sally wasn't able to pay the full rent, but you know, here's so what. You know, she has this air to her that understands that time moves on. You know, Fräulein, her, you know, she's a widow, she's all by herself, helping these people out. And this song perfectly encapsulates that and really sets that character up. And again, it sets for the scene of Germany at this time. You know, it was very poor. So instead of waiting around for someone to be able to pay the right amount, you know, here she is like, so what? You know, I'd rather take 10 cents from you than have nothing until someone could pay 50.
Now, Fräulein Schneider does have a rule with all the ladies who rent rooms from her, and that's don't bring guys, or don't what she said, don't bring Johns back to the room. In other words, don't bring your work where you sleep.
Yeah, and you know that's what people had to do, and that is also typical of this environment that we are in, which the MC, you know, hits upon later in another number. But yeah, you know, and that's so what is going to be the next number, and yeah, it does a really good job of setting up the outside world, because you're soon about to whoosh, dive headfirst into Sally. You know, once Sally kind of takes over, you know, to me that the show all of a sudden just goes, it's just a bullet train, which is Sally Bowles.
So the next song is "Don't Tell Mama," which is probably one of my favorite songs in the show, and it's literally it's a tongue-in-cheek song where Sally and the Kit Kat girls are like, you know, it's okay that you guys watch us, but whatever you do, just don't tell our mothers what we're doing here. And like they just go off on this tangent. It's like, you could tell my uncle it's all right because just yesterday he joined the line, and I'm like,
yep,
oh, that's funny, but don't tell mama what you saw.
Yeah, and again, you know, this is one of the reasons why I love this show is because again, it's one of the first shows that brings real life into a club setting. Because you know, a lot of musicals, especially at this time, from what I'm aware, is they sing in the moment. You know, it's like, oh, we're walking in a park and I'm going to sing in the park, or we're in the woods and oh, I'm going to sing a song. But to actually be able to translate that to a stage in like a production, this is one of the first shows that really does it. And I know there's a little scene that happens before that, but again, it sets Sally up perfect. You know, it really dives into her because you don't have a lot of her at this moment. You know, she got the apartment, and so what? The MC does a little introduction, introduces Sally as the main Kit Kat lead girl, and you get this number that describes her. You know, she's on an adventure. She's lying to everyone. She's lying through her teeth just so she can travel and live the life that she wants to. So you get a really good character depiction of her within this cute. I mean, it's a favorite number of mine too. You know, I just love the idea of don't tell mama. And, you know, if done correctly, she's actually not supposed to be the best singer. You know, in the original, the base material that this is based on, Sally Bowles is not talented. She's not supposed to be talented, which kind of showcases why she's headlining at the Kit Kat Club and not really picking up steam on her career that she's trying to create. And I think Natasha Richardson throughout the show does a really good job of that, of not being Liza Minnelli, who is perfection in the movie, but giving her that roughness to her. And the dancing is, I love it. I do love this number.
Natasha Richardson, may she rest in peace.
Oh my gosh, like I remember loving this number. I of course fell in love with the MC. You know, that was a dream role of mine. I did it. I had the dream role. But after that, I was able to appreciate Natasha Richardson a little bit more. My focus was able to be on her. Like, yeah, she deserves every accolade for this, because to be able to pull off something where you're entertaining, but you're not supposed to be entertaining.
Right.
That's hard. You know, it goes into Gypsy with Gypsy Rose Lee. You know, she's not supposed to be, you know, Kristen Chenoweth or Julie Andrews. You know, she's not supposed to be that. But how do you play that? There's a balance there, and Natasha Richardson does it. And again, may she rest in peace. You know, oh man, this is perfection.
So the next song we get into is Mein Herr, which I think is hilarious. It is another funny tongue-in-cheek song, but it is more of her trying to, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? It's more of her trying to convey to the audience why she is the way she is.
I agree. You know, this number definitely provides the stubbornness that she has, the selfishness that she kind of embodies. You know, she is very, to put it very bluntly, a little narcissistic. You know, the world revolves around her. You know, all these stories revolve around her. She is the center style of a spinet. You know, she's that center rotation, that gravity, the sun. She's that gravitational force. And this does a really good job of it. What's interesting about this song is that this song was specifically written for Liza for the movie. And that's when it was added. If I remember correctly. I'm going to check my notes really quick. It's either that or Don't Tell Mama, but I'm pretty sure it's this one. That it was written for the movie, and then it was added in. And then one of my favorite parts is there's a moment where the MC, when I did the production of Cabaret, it was the 80s rendition. It was the 80s revival. So my memory is a little different from this 98 revival, but there's a moment, and they still do it, where he is Father Time, and then it's New Year, and then sorry, I'm now reliving the moment in my head. And it's New Year's, and he turns into Baby New Year, which was very fun to perform. Having, oh my gosh, the only time I have worn a giant adult diaper, I had a bonnet. So I came up with the cape, and then I had to do a quick spin, and I ripped the cape off, and it's me in an adult diaper and a bonnet with a bib on. Oh my gosh. The MC does so much in this show. Like, you have no idea. Like, unless you perform the MC, you have no idea what he really does in the show, and especially in these later revivals.
Now, it's funny that you mentioned that Sally is narcissistic, but she's also like the center of everything, and everything is gravitationally pulled towards her. Because at this point, Cliff is starting to go, oh, wow, she's really beautiful. Maybe she could be my muse, or maybe I could just see if I can talk to her. And it kind of works.
Yeah,
Sally, go ahead, go ahead.
Sally does have like this personality that's very effervescent, and everyone like she's just able to attract anyone. Um, so she's definitely like I feel she is a performer at heart. It's just unfortunate that she, honestly, again, from the source material, she's not supposed to be that talented. Um, and bringing up how they connect, one thing that I do miss is like in the telephone number in the previous renditions, revivals, that's kind of how they meet. And this cute little number where it's very historical, where um, they would call on the telephone and be like, I'd call you, be like, hey, can you buy me a drink? Oh, so that's how they would communicate with each other. But their interaction is definitely very cute and very quick, whirlwind. Sally's like a tornado. She really comes in. She's gonna blow everything away and blow everything around.
Which is funny because later on she becomes her own natural disaster. So yeah. The next song that we get into is Perfectly Marvelous.
So minus from Fräulein, this is actually the first number that takes place out of the club.
Mhm.
Um, and it starts to bring in, that reality where this is the life that's going on outside the club. And again, because of the way they wrote the songs and how they kind of crossfade, um, it works really well. Uh, I love this is I can't say I love every number. I can't do that, but there's a special one in this place for me. Um, if there was ever a perfect song to kind of represent a character, this is it, and it's for Sally. Because in this number, the whole idea here is, Cliff and Sally, Sally's now not able to pay for her apartment. So she's asking Cliff to if she can live with him. And he's like, you're too distracting. And then she goes into this magical number about how not distracting she is. This whole song is about her. Oh, I'm not distracting. And then she explains how she's not going to be distracting and distracts him for 2 minutes, which I think explains Sally so well. Again, she is the center of attention. If she's not the center of attention, she's going to get that attention. Um, and this number does that perfect. It sets that character a little bit more grounded. And it's a cute number. It's a really cute number. Uh, and that's when Cliff, then says, okay, you can come and stay with me.
It's funny that this number is entitled Perfectly Marvelous, because if I'm not mistaken, this was originally entitled Roommates at one point.
Then the original, yes. So this is another song that through the years has had not as many. The Money song has had the most, and we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, this one has had some modifications over the years. It was the 80s where the 80s revival where it became Perfectly Marvelous. Um, you know, again, from where the show was in the 60s, the original Broadway, where they weren't able to really dive into gay. They completely cut Cliff's whole bisexual gay thing out of it. They had to be very, it was a different time. So that was the song they decided to go with and explain more of that roommate situation. But now, again, through evolution and through time and, culture's changed, it's gotten a little bit more open.
Which leads into the next song, which is probably my personal favorite, and that's Two Ladies. And in the revival, Two Ladies is performed by Alan Cummings, a female and a male dressed as a female. And it is a wonderful song of debauchery, and I love it.
I am right there with you. I think this is like at the top of the list for me. I love this. It's pure. It's fun. This is really the first time since the welcome. The MC comes in. He kind of introduces like really quick. The MC's character at this point, he kind of plays everyman. So when Sally moves in with Cliff, he's carrying the suitcases in. He is somehow involved in every scene. So you kind of see him popping out.
He's very omnipresent, which is very,
yes.
very almost godlike.
Yeah, and I like the term everyman because I feel the MC's character he's supposed to represent society. When we start to really dive into, what does the MC represent? And to me, he is the master of ceremonies of this club that is the story of society. So that is what he kind of represents as a person. And throughout the show, all of his numbers are commentary. Right now, this number is commenting on the fact that it's unconventional for a man and a woman to live together in this time. And the MC is like, it's not really that bad. Some people have two people. And, goes, two ladies. Oh my gosh. So again, it sets up, it's commentary. He's commenting on Sally and Cliff's new defined relationship. They're now rooming together. She ends out with, Cliff's like, oh, we'll only have one narrow bed. We'll think of something. And that's where the MC like immediately drops in. So he's giving commentary that this is actually more acceptable and what's really happening. And this is when they introduce the boy dressed up as a woman. Again, this revival with Alan coming really explodes the LGBTQ visibility in the show. I love that. Unfortunately, I didn't have that experience. I had two women. I really fought, but again, we did the 80s, so it kind of didn't mesh well. It wasn't the purpose, which I understand. I flung that key around like it was, whew. I remember the director would always tell me, Sean, calm down on the key, buddy. We get it. We get what it represents. I'm like, okay, not changing a thing. But yeah, I love this. It's really cute. The choreography is a lot of fun. Yeah, I really, really love this number.
And the thing about this number is, it is normalizing not only three people living together, but almost a very polyamorous relationship that has bonded between these three people.
Yeah, again, I completely agree. Again, comparative to this original in the 80s revival, that was not the case. It was this production where, Cliff, who, well, I'll save that for later. But yeah, this number perfectly explodes the LGBTQ visibility, where it was not just guys and girls living together, but guys and guys. And the fact that this is not the first time that they will introduce a guy cross-dressing to pretend to be a woman. Again, it just gives social commentary on the time, how they had to hide it, be secretive. And yeah. Oh, I'm in the middle of the number right now in my head. So if I'm distracted, I'm just singing it to myself.
Now, the next song, we start to get into more of the crux of the underlying plot, and that is "It Couldn't Please Me More." This is when Herr Schultz, who has fallen in love with Fräulein Schneider, gives her probably the most, to the audience eye, probably the most bland gift ever, but to her,
And random.
it is the most amazing gift ever. He gives her a pineapple. And to her, it's just like, it's ambrosia. It is the food of the gods. And you have given this to me?
Yeah, it's a symbol of love.
Very much so. Now, I will have to tell the audience that Herr Schultz is an elderly Jewish fruit shop owner. So that's going to come into play later on.
Yes, and yes, and Fraulein Schneider, she is older. She is an older woman as well, which is another reason why I love these two characters, because it's not another young couple. They're really well defined, wonderful older characters.
To me, these two are like the heart of the show, because their characters have so much heart that you're just like, you are rooting for them the entire time.
Yeah, they're very simple. And I think that is showcased in the songs. You're in a show that takes place at a kid club. It's singing and dancing and choreography and boom, 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 boom. And then you get to these numbers with these two characters, and it's not that. I think it goes to a more traditional musical setup where it's more it's the moment, and that's classical theater. It's you sing when you can't verbalize how you feel, and that is what they're kind of doing, is they're singing their feelings and their love and appreciation for each other. And it's simple. It's just simple. It's not like a deep, dramatic declaration of love. It's, I got you a pineapple because they're sweet, and it is a symbol of love. Here you go. And then it ends with them just dancing, and they're just like la 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 la. I found this one personally, this is another favorite of mine. I love, again, how simple it is. It's from the heart. You can tell these two people are really into each other. There's no ulterior motive like Sally. There's no hiding of anything like Cliff. Because again, in this rendition, Cliff is exploring his sexuality. There's no obstacles. It's two people who just love each other. And as the MC, the MC is actually in this number holding the pineapple. Or at least I was in the 80s rendition, in the 80s revival version. And it was just so cute. I loved being the pineapple, because that's what you were. You were playing this character of the pineapple. And it was just a lot of fun. This is one of the sweetest numbers in the whole entire show.
So then we get into the next song, which is Tomorrow Belongs to Me, which is sung in the revival by a little kid at first. And it is so haunting because it's almost as if it's played on a vinyl record. And then the MC comes in at the very, very end with "To Me." And I'm like, ooh, stop.
So it actually is, the whole entire time, it is on the record player. So it is a record player of the boy soprano. And yeah, again, it's haunting, again, it's commentary on what's happening, that the Nazis are around and the Nazis are here, you're so engrossed into the other character stories, setting them up. And then this is like the official flagger for, okay, let's bring in the Nazis, let's bring in all this. And, all these characters are going through so much already. Let's add the Nazis. And then very it's Nazi. Like, whoosh. So you're now adding this whole new element that these characters are having to survive and be around of. And yeah, the MC, coming in at the end, again, it's just connected it to the social commentary that's what he represents. He's the voice of the people, of the community, and does it in a very dramatic manner. I think a lot of, I wasn't in there. I didn't live during this time, but to me, it kind of represented how they weren't taking it too seriously. You know, a lot of people weren't really taking, oh, okay, you know, it's, you know, Hitler is now coming in because he hasn't really taken power yet. It's not the end of that. That's at the end. Their presence is now becoming more apparent, and everyone's just like, eh. And I think that's what he's kind of commenting on in just that moment. It's to me, you know,
Yeah.
they don't really understand what's actually happening.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, at this point in the show, Sally Bowles is pregnant.
Yes, so that actually goes into this next number. One thing you know, again, the show is filled with so many storylines that we haven't even gotten to this part yet. You know, one of the reasons why, going back to Perfectly Marvelous, one of the reasons why she had to convince Cliff to let her move in with him is because her boyfriend kicked her out. So she's now homeless, which is why then she meets Cliff, and then she convinces him to let her live with him. At the same time, she finds out she's pregnant, and she doesn't know who the father is. So at this point, you know, after Tomorrow Belongs to Me, you get a little bit more insight into that. And, you know, in the scene that leads up to maybe this time, you know, Cliff is going through this personal moment of, you know, does he want to live this life of being a father and being a father to this baby who, you know, it could not be his, but he's kind of convinced that it is. So, and Sally, you know, Sally wants an abortion. She doesn't want this child. He actually, I think this is going to be more during the song and after, but he actually ends up convincing her to carry the child, to have the child a full term, because this is the life that he's decided. And in the middle of that, you have Maybe This Time. Not not an original song of the original recording. This was added to the movie, which was then added to the show.
But in the movie, it's later in the movie. It's
The
almost
movie.
it's almost like her last song in the movie.
So we you know, I was gonna we'll dive into this later because there's a huge that's a huge thing we got to go into. So I'll comment on that later. But yes, the movie is different. But yeah, so that is what this kind of number is about. It's a personal reflection. You know, it's another example of real life being emoted onto the Kit Kat stage. It's a solo performance from her. And you know, it's a real personal song. You know, a life where she feels like she's not winning, where she's always a losing, and she's, you know, she's getting beaten down. You know, she just got kicked out by her boyfriend, and, you know, was homeless, and now she's pregnant, and it's ruining all these things for her. And to have this song where it expresses how determined she is to win. That's what this song means to me. It's a personal, you know, it's personal affirmation. It's a personal mantra going, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. Maybe this time I'll win. You know, maybe this time I can get what I want. Maybe this time things will work out. Maybe this time I won't get kicked out on the street again. And that's why I think it's a good addition. That I'm really happy they brought this into the Broadway show. It's a really good song. And again, it was not written for this show at all. Interesting fact is, if I remember correctly, this was a song that Liza Minnelli used to sing. They had already written it. It was supposed to be for a different show, but Liza was like, it's pretty right here. And then they did. So they added the show for that reason, just for Liza Minnelli.
Liza Minnelli can just add anything to whatever because it's Liza Minnelli.
She's Liza Minnelli. You know, she was a big name. You know, Judy Garland. You know, that's lineage. As a lineage. So, yeah. What are your thoughts on this number?
So from the movie version, because like I said, we're going to discuss it later. The movie and the show take this song in a totally different direction. In the musical, it's more of a hopeful song, whereas in the movie, it's almost like a Send in the Clowns kind of song.
Yeah.
It's very uplifting. I absolutely love this song. If I was a woman, I would belt this song out repeatedly. Granted, I'm a gay male, so I will belt the song out repeatedly anyway.
We can still sing it. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
But yeah, it's a nice change of pace for Sally, because we see her soul. And not only do we see her soul, but we see her heart and we see her hopes. And we almost see the innocent little girl that is inside of her. And it makes you go, okay, so she's not all egotistical. She's not all the world revolves around me. She does have feeling. And not only that, she is very cognizant of what her actions do to other people, just in this one song.
Yeah, I think it really shows how hurt she is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if this is the depth that we're getting from this character, she's hurt. She has some baggage. And that could weigh someone down. And I agree, you know, I see this as like, you know, it's, you know, I kind of see it more as like, it's just like a glimmer of hope. You know, she's holding on to hope. She's holding on to that one thing so it doesn't go completely dark.
Now, it's funny that you mentioned baggage. Actually, go ahead and continue before I move on to the next plot point.
But yeah, so yeah, that's what that song represents for me too. Yeah, it's just her holding on to that glimmer of hope. I do agree. Yeah, this is a more, you know, Mine Hair was slower, but the whole end it picks up. So this is a nice refresh of, whew, you know, again, it's more of a pause because all of Sally's numbers are quick, dancing, woo, 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 perfectly marvelous. She's like circling and dancing in this room. And here she is just standing still in the moment. Here's this baggage that I've gone through. And, you know, here's me now holding on to hope.
Mm-hmm. Now, like I said, it's funny that you mentioned baggage because the next little plot point involves a suitcase. So there's a character that we briefly talked about, but we haven't really introduced him. His name is Ernst Lugwig, who is a German smuggler who befriends Cliff. And in this particular point, he's like, hey, you want to earn some extra money? Take this suitcase and deliver it somewhere. And Cliff, knowing that, you know, hey, extra money will help Sally, goes ahead and does it. Which brings on the next song, which is a nice juxtaposition. And that next song is Money.
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 Money, 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 money.
Money.
Oh my gosh. Again, this is a whole, again, we keep saying this and we'll dive into it. Whew. What fascinates me the most about this song is this song was in the original show, but not as the song in this recording.
Right.
The words that we know off this album, off of this, the money makes the world, you know, that wasn't the Money song in the original Broadway. This song has so many changes, it's ridiculous. But yeah, lovely commentary on how money operates. Money makes the world go round.
Very, very much so. Very, very much so. And it also just shows how greed and corruption leads into more and more money. And the MC, how he is just how he's presented in this song, it's very leading player from Pippin, but it's also very capitalist. Like, hey, I will sell you out for money. It doesn't matter as long as it's money.
Yeah, a mark, a yen, a buck, or a pound is all that makes the world go round. It's money. How do you get it? Give me the money. Money, 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 money.
And it's during this song where we start to see the MC not as the MC, but more as the omnipresent player that is in the show. Because up to this point, we sort of just, it's a musical. He's going to show up anywhere. But now we see him in this social commentary song, and you're like, okay, so he's more than just an MC. He's more than just this person. Who does he represent? And so as you're watching, you start just thinking in your head who the MC could actually represent. And then, like you said, the MC represents the everyman. The MC represents everyone else that's in the world. The MC represents you, he represents me. He represents the downtrodden. And any way to make any form of money, he will do. He is okay with.
And again, this is the reason why, he's commenting and he's singing this song is, Cliff doesn't realize it, but what he's actually doing, he is helping the Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I agree, this is one of the only, I guess minus Welcome, the opening, where this is all MC. This is not the MC's character. This is more like a social commentary of the bigger story at hand. All the other numbers, you get a peek inside his world, who he is as a person. You realize in Two Ladies that he is gay. He is, you'll learn later on that he's actually Jewish. So yeah, this is just purely commentary. And I think it shows really the ballsiness of him, because this is what he's commenting on. You didn't really talk about the Nazis, because if you talked about the Nazis, they would come and they would take you. So the fact that he is bringing this topic up, again, one of the first times we start seeing the Nazi influence infiltrate the club. So you are starting to see it submerge itself into society. So, you're now being enveloped, getting another layer of that. And again, the MC is just talking, this is how the world works. How odd that number is still very accurate for today.
Very much so.
I think a lot of the numbers, you can still have it today. Even Alan Cumming in Cabaret was one of, he got recast when they did the reboot in 2014. He got cast again, like how many years, 98, 08, almost 20 years later. Same role, but it was still perfectly placed in time. So the social commentary is for pre-World War II, and it oddly works well today, which is cool but sad, in a whole nother podcast.
Now, this leads into the next song, which is Married. And at this point, okay, so what has happened before? Fräulein Schneider, like we had said before, has this hostel that she rents rooms to. She has rented a room to Fräulein Cost?
I think, yes, Cost.
Cost, okay. And she's a German prostitute. And Fräulein Schneider sees a sailor leaving her room. And Fräulein Schneider's like, remember we had this discussion. You do not bring Johns back into here. And Fräulein Cost is like, well, I've seen you with Herr Schultz, so what's that all about? And Herr Schultz, is down the hall and hearing this, wants to save Fräulein Schneider's honor. So he's like, oh, it's because we are to be married very, very soon. And Caroline Coast is like, oh, well, congratulations. And Caroline Schneider's like, wait, what? Um, what? And then Ernst Schultz proposes to her and says, will you please marry me? And I'm like, yay, make it say yes.
And just how sweeter can you be? What a beautiful what a beautiful knight in shining armor. Because again, the whole reason why he's doing this is because you have a Nazi who is, battling Fraulein Schneider and threatening to, bring all this negativity to her business. And here's Herr Schultz trying, being the knight in shining armor. Another beautiful little real moment.
Mhm.
Again, this is the part of the show where the Nazis, that influence really starts to set in. You get it with the briefcase, you get it into money, you get it into this, and then again, the end of the act, which we'll be getting to, then you're realizing, okay, this is when this is what part of history we're in this huge rise and the quickness that it happens. You really start.
Is at this point where we find out that Ernst is actually a Nazi because he has the armband on. And you're like, oh God.
Yep. So yeah, so you reveal that Ernst, which is a Cliff's friend that he met on the train, the one who gave him the briefcase. You now learn that. So you're starting to see the prevalence of the Nazis come into play, which perfectly sets us up for the next number, which takes place in a bit of a scene. This is Fraulein Schneider and they're in
Herr Schultz engagement party.
Yeah, sorry, in their engagement party. And all these characters are in. You have Cost, you have Ernst, you have Sally's there, Cliff's there. All these players outside of the club are in there. And then you get the song "Tomorrow Becomes to Me," where Cost and Ernst, yes, where Cost and Ernst just take this Nazism by the hand, and they're like, whoosh, here it is, and this is how we end the act.
But like this rendition of "Tomorrow Belongs to Me" is almost militaristic. Like it has a march to it, and you're just like, oh, I don't like this. I don't like this at all.
Yeah. And when they did the '98 revival, this was a take from the '80s revival. You see the MC emulate Hitler, which I had to do. I had the mustache, I had the jacket and the Nazi logo, and you see him salute. So, you said it perfect. It's a great representation and a musical representation of the Nazi army with the marching and the very military. You say militaristic.
Militaristic.
That's a silly word. Say that 3 times fast.
With my stutter and my list, oh
no. But yeah, you get this musical representation of that. And it really punches it in. And with the MC doing the Nazi salute at the end, and then it cuts out to the blackout. Boom. That's boom. There is the mic drop for here are the Nazis. They have come.
Now, the thing about Act 1 is, and we've sort of discussed this already, it is the slow rise of Hitler into power. You see it in the background with like all the songs that are sort of coming. Like the Money song is Hitler's rise. It is Hitler's, okay, I'm ascending while everybody else is descending. And then at this point, the Tomorrow Belongs to Me reprise Hitler's in power. He is the man in charge. And at that point, you automatically fear for all the characters because we know, as an audience member, we know what's going to happen. We know where it's going to lead to. We don't want it to lead to there, but we know that someone is going to get taken.
Yeah, and as an audience member, I always find it interesting when I see shows where it's more like a historical show, like Hamilton. You kind of know how it's going to end, but you get so distracted by everything else that's happening. You get to relive that. Oh, that's right, that happened. That's right, that happened. And that's what this show does. Any show that revolves, in my opinion, any show that revolves around this time period, the Nazis are always there. Mm-hmm. World War II, the Holocaust, it is there. And we know it's there because of the time period. When you go and see a show, it's going to take place then. It's going to say in the brief description, pre-World War II, Nazis, blah, blah, blah. But again, like you state, and like I said, the Nazis slowly infiltrate the show. They slowly come in. So you're led to believe at the beginning, oh, this is kind of hopeful. This is kind of here, blah, blah, blah. And then all the drama starts when the Nazis come in. So it's a really great way that the writers of the show paralleled that. All the drama that these characters are going through don't really start to arise until the Nazis start to come in. The Nazis come in with the briefcase and you have the number. You have Fräulein Kost accusing Fräulein Schneider. She's a Nazi. Then you have the Mary number. So now the Nazis are starting to make the changes. And what a great job that the writers did to parallel that so wonderfully.
So that brings us to the end of Act 1, which, once again, the Nazis are here. So the beginning of Act 2, which is the entr'acte, we see it is almost like a recap of not of Act 1, but more of the themes of Act 1, because we see the MC and all the Kit Kat Club girls, and I'm assuming guys as well, and they're dancing, everything's hunky-dory, but then all of a sudden the music changes and it turns into a goose step. And you're like, whoa, hold up, what just happened?
So there's a lot more to it than that. So yes, there's a more traditional entr'acte, but what happens is the curtains open and it's the Kit Kat girls. The MC is actually in drag. So the whole point of all of this is that you don't notice, and this is one of my favorite parts when I performed the MC. This was probably one of my favorite parts. And I'll share a personal story about why later. But the MC comes on and is dressed in drag, dressed as one of the Kit Kat girls. And then there's this huge number that's a huge dance number. So you're getting like more of like the dancer part of it where it's like, wee, kick line and stuff. Then the MC for commentary reveals himself and showcases that he is actually not one of the Kit Kat girls, but a man dressed in drag. And that's when the goose step comes in. Again, a great moment that doesn't really get shown a lot because it's not on the cast recording. The actual number that they dance to. But again, quirky social commentary. The Nazis are here. Everyone is hiding. The MC is hiding because he can't be his real self. All these, so there's that social commentary of being hidden and his personal rebuke at it. He is making a joke. Again, you don't talk about the Nazis. You don't make fun of the Nazis. You don't mention the Nazis. If you say anything bad about the Nazis, history has taught me that is never a good thing. So you get a little bit of personal insight with the MC and how ballsy he actually is. So I love this number. I love this moment just because of my personal moment that I'll share later. But yeah, it's campy, it's dance, it's a nice dance number, and a cute little comedic moment before a whole bunch of serious stuff happens because it just
It goes downhill from here. It really does. So the next song is Married Reprise, and it's Air Schultz and it's Fräulein Schneider, and they're just having their. I want to say it's like a couple days before the wedding, and they're just Air Schultz is just reaffirming to Fräulein Schneider that, hey, this is a good thing that we're doing. This is what we both want, and the song ends with a brick being thrown through the fruit shop window, and instantly you're like, oh, right, Air Schultz is Jewish. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, again, you get entrapped into again the cuteness of them. Here's Fräulein Schneider, who's nervous. She's nervous about the world and nervous about this marriage and the Jewish thing because it's a huge thing. And here is Airline Schultz. He is convinced. He does a successful job. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It's not that serious. Let's just be all cutesy and married, and then literal boom. Like just that's the representation you need. Boom. It ain't going nowhere, sweetheart. It is not going anywhere. Another moment where the MC pops in, but he throws the brick. But yeah, and foreshadowing of what's to come for pretty much the show in general. There's everyone in general. And it's because he's Jewish.
Which leads us into the next song, If You Could See Her. Whoo, this song is heavy, especially if you're seeing it in person. This is a heavy song because it is the MC singing about the love of his life, which is a person in an ape suit. Oh.
Yeah,
and then like just the last line in the song, which I'm sure you will get into. So go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, another perfect example of the multiple layers that the MC plays. This is social commentary. This is very reminiscent of Two Ladies, where it is a little bit more personal. He's introducing himself. This is my lover. This is who I love. And the commentary is, I'm in love. Why can't you? I love her. Why does all this stuff matter? Who cares what she looks like if she is a gorilla? And that's the whole point is, if you could see her through my eyes, you wouldn't see this. You wouldn't see this gorilla that your eyes are perceiving her as. You would see her as this, she's clever, she's smart, she reads music, she doesn't mind that I smoke, she doesn't mind that I drink. She'll always be there, she'll hold my hand. Really building up and doing a good job of getting the audience to follow him along. Love is love. Love is love. But then he throws the Jewish in. So perfect slap in the face. It mirrors the brick. So it's kind of the counterpart of it. The brick is the huge realization of, oh, the Nazis are here. And then here's the other viewpoint. Oh, she's Jewish. Your viewpoint only changed because of that one word. So this song is deep. And just this song, yes. The other thing with this number that very entertains me is the person inside the gorilla suit that has to do the dance number. That's a whole when you're in the show, and the wonderful woman Liz, who was our gorilla in our show, that number was hard because she couldn't see through the gorilla suit. But back to the show, again, it just gets sad. This number that is, the MC is doing his job of being carefree and entertaining, and then it's boom. And he pleads with them. Mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, is it a crime to fall in love? Where the heart truly leads us? Why can't the world live and let live and lost and live and let live? If you could see her, really pleading because she's Jewish.
Mm-hmm. And if I don't think, I think the exact line is, if you can see her through my eyes, she wouldn't look Jewish at all. And
yeah, that's the end of that little thing. Yeah, that's the last line, and then it's the fanfare. Because again, he's commentary. He knows that he's not supposed to make these jokes, so he's like, wouldn't be Jewish at all. Okay, bye. Yeah.
And then we go into like the next couple songs are just literally the decline of all the action, and the world that the rose-colored world that we had started off with is now becoming unraveled. And the next song is at this point, so Fräulein Schneider comes into the room with Sally and Cliff and gives them back the engagement present, saying, hey, so the wedding is off. And Cliff is like trying to maintain, his romantic side. No, don't give up so easily. And then she sings this heartbreaking song, What Would You Do? And you are instantly put into Fräulein Schneider's shoes of what would you do in this situation? Would you continue to risk a wedding and risk something happening? Or would you just go, you know what, let's just call it off and let's just.
Yeah, and that's exactly the decision that she has to make. She's old. She's set in her ways. Marrying someone who's Jewish, I mean, we all know what happens. We all know what happens. In this, they don't know that's what's going to be happening when you live in the moment, but does she want to disrupt everything to be with this man who's Jewish, knowing that there's more bricks to be thrown? Again, the Nazis are not so silent anymore. We talked about Act 1, how the Nazi slowly infiltrated the show. They are here. They are destroying everything. They are marching over everything now. And it's obvious what they're doing. And she has to make that choice. And it's heartbreaking. What would you do? Would you be married and be afraid for the rest of your life, wondering what's going to happen next? Or can I be exactly where I'm at, safe and sound, and just kind of not a part of that? People had to make that choice. It's sad. It's just heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm. And then, so at this point, we get a lot of exposition because there's only like 2 more songs left, or 3 more songs left in the show. So Cliff tries to convince Sally to leave Germany, and Sally's like, nah, I'm not leaving. I'm staying right here. And then she has this song entitled I Don't Care Much.
So it's not her, it's the MC.
It's the MC. Sorry, the MC. And it's almost like a change of character for him. Another change of character, which is very, I don't want to say it makes the MC look evil, but it makes him very, it doesn't matter what side it is. I'm playing both sides. I'm playing both fields.
Yeah, because this is another social commentary song. He's commenting on the demise of Sally and Cliff's relationship. Cliff is trying to convince her to go back to America. This is not just affecting Germany. This is affecting everyone. And that's what he's trying to convince her to do. And ultimately, she's not going to, because of the German politics that are happening. All these outside influences that, if she is resorting to the fact, like, she is a disbeliever. So she's one of those people in the populace in the community was like, oh no, it's not really going to happen. It's not really going to be like this. And that disrupts their dynamic, Cliff's and Sally's relationship. And then you have I Don't Care Much. Again, this is another song that has been changed throughout its revivals. And we get this, and I think you hit it right on. I think you hit it more on the nose, where it's the MC showing, one commenting on Sally's response,
Right.
Ignoring it. I don't care. I don't care what happens there. It's not going to affect us. And that is what he's more or less commenting on, is that populace is going, I'm not really paying attention. I'm disconnecting from that. And coming from a person who the MC is not only gay, but is Jewish. That's a heavy song. That's a heavy song to sing, to sing a song about ignoring your people being taken away. It's deep. It's deep. And you finally see, I think ultimately the negative take over the MC.
Yes.
Really starts to comment on his personal mental place at this time, where he's just like, I don't care. I don't care what they do to me. I don't care what I say. I need to, for me, it was more the MC kind of realizing he has to talk about this. Does it, do all these moments that led up to this moment even matter? He talks about having kisses and dancing and having this relationship, and then you don't care. That's a huge thing. So yeah, you really get a dive into where, in my opinion, where the MC's at, and the song clearly states that I don't care. I just don't care anymore.
The funny thing about this song is it's almost, because like the entire show, we have seen the MC being just free to do whatever he wants to do. With the if you could see her song, you start to see the human side of the MC, and then with this one, you really just see the MC. There's no more sugarcoating it. There's no more tap dance numbers. It is, you get what you get, and guess what? I don't care what happens. And you almost feel bad for him, because you're like, no, don't give up. Don't keep fighting. But
yeah, and the color starts to disappear from the show. You said it, the MC at the beginning is very entertaining, very vibrant, very colorful, very showy, very entertaining, very over the top. He is taking charge of society. And this is the number, if you could see her, it's just the two of them. It's just him and the gorilla. And now it's just him. All the show, all the razzle dazzle, all the sparkly, all the color is being stripped away. And you see, yeah, this is like the MC. Plain, simple, no distractions, no dance numbers, no reveals, no costume changes, no comedic one-liners or zingers. This is where he's at.
In a way, this is the MC without makeup.
Yeah.
There's no rouge. It's all him. And so now we get into the part of the show where it's, I call it the climax. It's so Ernst comes back to give Cliff another suitcase or another briefcase to deliver, and Cliff is like, I don't want to do it. And Cliff is like, once again, trying to convince Sally to leave with him. And Cliff's like, look, I want to take care of you and I want to take care of you and our baby. And Sally's like, there is no baby. And immediately you're like, oh no, Sally. And at this moment, you see Cliff go from nice guy to you're nothing to me. In like that. And
so you jumped the gun a little bit. You jumped the gun a little bit. So after I Don't Care Much, what happens next is it is Ernst and Cliff. That part is true. Ernst is trying to get Cliff to do another job. He's not going to do it. He ends up getting beat up by the Nazis.
Yes, there it is.
Ends up getting beat up by the Nazis. And then Sally actually comes on and sings Cabaret. So that is probably the next number we need to get into.
The title song.
Yes. So you have Cliff just got beat up. And he gets dragged out of the club. So then at this point, the MC kind of trying to get everyone back on track to forget about that, introduces Sally, introduces that this is going to be the last number here. And then she goes into Cabaret, which I would like to hear your thoughts on this number first.
To me, this song sums up the theme and the overall focus of the show. Life is a cabaret. It is talking about how everything in life can be rose-colored, it could be happy, it could be go-lucky, but at the same time, the real world is still out there. The real world is still going to affect your everyday life. So you can either focus on the cabaret or focus on the life. And so when she says that life is a cabaret, she's pretty much saying, you know what? Live free, because guess what? It's going to happen anyway. Everything that's happening in life is going to happen in life. So you might as well just enjoy it and stop trying to focus on one or the other.
Yeah, I agree with you. This song is one of those perfect musical numbers that summarizes what the character has learned. And again, you have a song where Sally's talking about where she's a loser. She doesn't win. She is doubting herself. She is doubting her decisions. And also knowing what just happened, which you kind of already talked about, it doesn't really get revealed till after this number.
Right.
So she's also realizing and has the personal knowledge of, I did what I wanted, So yeah, that is what this number is about and what she describes in it. I used to have a girlfriend known as Elsie. So she's talking about her friend who lived the life of a prostitute. She rented by the hour. She wasn't really attractive. And when she died, the neighbors came and made fun of her.
Mm-hmm.
On her deathbed, her neighbors came and made fun of her. And, that is the moment in the song where I think she kind of realizes it. It's living your life in the moment, because you can't control what people are going to say or do when you're dead. And she literally saw that. These people just started making fun of her. That's like, I was drinking much booze and liquor. So she really then just gets entrapped in this idea of living in the moment and making life a cabaret, making every moment grand, maybe making every moment special, living each moment to the fullest, like you're in a cabaret with lights and costumes and an orchestra and everything's perfect. So to me, it's kind of a character summation of her. You know, you see throughout this show her attachment to Cliff. And their attachment, you know, it grows strong. You know, the other thing with this, and we can start getting into it, and I'm just reading my notes to make sure I get it. Yeah, so, you know, you have this number, and then you get to the next scene. And, you know, the thing with Cliff is he's had this character arc throughout the whole thing that we really haven't gotten to, is he is questioning his sexuality. You know, he is bisexual. In this, in the 98, he actually does come out. So that's a huge difference from the original. But you then get this scene where Sally and Cliff really aren't seeing eye to eye anymore. Sally just bursts out that she got the abortion, and Cliff hits her. And that is the demise from there. And, you know, Sally then claims that, you know, she's leaving. And, you know, it's just like, bye. And that's how it ends. You know, that's how the relationship ends. It's just how very, again, paralleling what's happening with the Nazis. You know, it's just a boom. All these things that are happening in the show are just coming with a punch. And here is Cliff literally hitting her because she got an abortion, because she took her life from her, because she took charge of her own life and her own destiny. And Cliff just was brokenhearted, and just was just lied to.
And then we get into the finale, which it is, I'm gonna say it's like a reprise of Willkommen, but then it starts to change, and it is taken over by the Nazi Party, and you're just like, oh. The thing about the Nazi Party and this show, it's almost like a stain. Like you see a drop in the fabric of the show, and then it just spreads and spreads.
It's like a ripple effect, yeah.
Until it has fully engulfed the Kit Kat Club. The Kit Kat Club is no longer the Kit Kat Club. It is now.
And you said it, you know, you hear it instantly when the music starts. So the way the number starts, it's Cliff actually boards a train because he's leaving. He's going back to America, and he's starting to write his manuscript, which the play, this musical, is based on Cliff's, you know, the real person, his manuscript as well. But we'll get into that later. So it ends with him starting to write his manuscript. He's like, I was at the Kit Kat Club, and there I met Sally Bowles. And he's starting right into it. You get introduced to the MC again, and you hear it in the music. You know, there is this mood, this heaviness to it. It's not crisp, it's not clear. You know, it's brutal, it's very draggy. Even the MC's personality is not the bright and vibrant. I believe when I did this, I performed him. You know, in the opening, I was, you know, very bright and poppy, and, you know, it's the MC. I think when I performed it, I had a cigarette. It was a fake cigarette, but I was smoking on stage. Welcome, you know. Again, the MC no longer cares. And you hear that in his energy, you hear it in the music, and then you also hear it in the staging, and see it in the staging. And the way that it kind of works is you see, you know, the orchestra is very present. You start seeing the lights dim out on orchestra members. And then you start seeing lights, you know, dancers are no longer on stage. And again, you don't see it in the soundtrack because, of course, you're just hearing it. But then you see the MC disrobe in Nazis in Nazi prison wear. So, and on his prison uniform, you see the golden star for Jewish, and then you see the pink triangle for gay. And then you see him with some lighting that he was executed, that he was hung.
It's just such a sad ending, but it's almost like, how else would you expect this to end?
True MC style. True MC style. You know, again, we talked about throughout this whole entire show how ballsy the MC is, and at this point, he doesn't care. And if this is his theatrical Kit Kat death, this is true MC form where he is going to be ballsy about it. But you know, it also mirrors what happened to him. You know, his being outspoken got him killed. And you know, they did a cool train motif as well. So they were able to bring in the train of him being transported to the concentration camps. But yeah, I mean, sad. Yeah. And Auf Wiedersehen, I'll be adult.
And that's Cabaret in a nutshell. It's a sad show.
Big nutshell.
but like I said before, it is a beautiful show, and we highly suggest you listen to it. All right, Sean, we're now going to go into the top 3 songs per person. So, what are your top 3 songs? I know I'm making you choose.
We have to. So I don't want to say my 3 first. I think we should go. We both say our 3. We both say our 2. We both say our 1. Can we do it that way?
So sure.
So we have to think a minute. We have to think.
I know how to think. I know what my 3 songs are. Okay, so my number 3 song is definitely going to go to Cabaret. My number. Go ahead.
Mine's gonna go to Don't Tell Mama.
Okay, which is funny because my number 2 song is Don't Tell Mama.
So my number 2 is going to be the Pineapple song. It Couldn't Please Me More.
Right, it couldn't please you more. My number 1 song, and you're gonna go, wait, what? My number 1 song has to be the opening number, Willkommen, just because it's not like any other opening number.
I can definitely see that. My number 1 is Two Ladies.
My
number 1 is Two Ladies. You know, I picked those 3. I think those 3, it gives each storyline a little bit of a shout out. But two ladies that I remember when I first listened to this soundtrack, Two Ladies was the number I fell in love with first, and that's my favorite song.
All right, now we're gonna go into random thoughts on the show. This might be a little bit longer because there's a lot to unpack with this show. So I'm gonna go ahead and hand it over to Sean. Sean, what are your random thoughts on this show?
So yeah, there is a lot to unpack. You know, the reason why is that there's so much to unpack is there are so many revivals of this show. You have the original, which was and I'm going to check my notes and just to make sure I get dates and everything correct. The original show first premiered in 1966. It opened at the Broadhurst Theater on November 2nd, 1966. And that show is not the same show as the soundtrack we just went through. It's not like, and then there was the other main revival was the 80s. So there's like 84, 86 was like the second big revival of it. Then you have the movie, and then you have the 90 production. each one of those 4 renditions of it are completely different. Now, of course, you have the general storylines the same. It's the MC and Sally and Cliff and Fraulein. I'm so horrible. Yes. So you have it's the same story. The songs are different. The songs are in a different order. And the openness of the show is different. For example, when you look at the original production in 1967, the MC was not as flamboyant, over the top, sexual. He was more like Joel Grey did it, which was more prim and proper. And Joel Grey did an amazing job of bringing that to the role while still being the jokester that he is. Another prime example is Cliff was straight in the original when he is gay. Like, he actually comes in the original manuscript, he actually comes out as gay. So in the original 60s production, he was straight. In the movie, bi. 80s, fully bi. And then in the 98, comes out. What a huge difference just right there that exemplifies the difference between these shows. So I definitely encourage you to listen to all the productions because they're all completely different. Another prime example is the Money Song. The Money Song, originally in the 60s production, is not the Money Song that you know of in this soundtrack. The Money Song in the original 60s was called the Money Song, but it was actually the song Sitting Pretty. Now, Sitting Pretty we didn't mention at all because it's not in this revival. So again, in the 60s revival, the Money Song was really Sitting Pretty. Then you get to the movie. Now I'm confused. Then you get to the movie where they got rid of it and they did the Money Song with Liza Minnelli and with Sally and the MC. You get to the 80s edition, the London, where they have Sitting Pretty. They separate it. So Sitting Pretty is its own number. It's at the top of the show. Because again, when the 60s, it goes into Welcome, and then it's Sitting Pretty is the first main number that you see. So in the London 80s, Sitting Pretty gets put in the front, and then you have Liza Minnelli and Joel Grey Money. And then you get to the US 80s production, Sitting Pretty and the Money Song gets smushed together, and it's the Money Song that it's the MC introducing the Kit Kat Girls. And then you get to the 90s, the one we just did, where they cut out Sitting Pretty. It's just the Money Song, and the introduction of the Kit Kat Girls is done in the beginning. So that transformation right there exemplifies how each production is different. Cabaret is the only modern musical to have 3 different published materials that you can do, an amateur theater can do, and it's 3 different song scores, 3 different storylines, alternations. And there's only one other show that beats that, and it's Candide. And they have 4 publications with different story changes. So that's one of the things I love most about Cabaret is, depending on the production we did, when I did it, it was the US 80s production. I remember we tried to they wanted the London because they wanted to have Sitting Pretty and they wanted the Sally MC Money, but we ended up getting the US version, which is the one that you can actually get the rights to, which I had to do Sitting Pretty. It was 10 minutes, man. Like, if you think about, just in that rendition, I had to do Sitting Pretty, which is about 3 minutes. Money, which is about a 4-minute song. And then the introduction of the girls and the boys, that's 10 minutes. 10 minutes of me running and singing my heart out. But, so yeah, again, it's each of these revivals, collections of work of Cabaret are completely different. the abortion wasn't even brought up in the original. That wasn't even in it. What was controversial was them being roommates, which you made a comment on earlier. That is where that song came in. And then it slowly got transformed into, I believe it was the 80s is when they rewrote it to have Perfectly Marvelous. There's so much. There's just so much. Another thing is the movie. When you get into the movie, Fosse really wanted to get that separation. So the movie won. Fosse got a director Oscar. It got an Oscar for Liza Minnelli, Joel Grey. Joel Grey is one of a handful of actors who won the Tony and the Oscar for playing the same role. The most recent recipient was Viola Davis when she did Fences. But it went on to, score a whole bunch of stuff. But the one thing Fosse wanted to do was he wanted to really separate the Kit Kat numbers from the real life numbers. So he actually took out all those numbers. So he took out Perfectly Marvelous. There's no Fraulein Schneider and Ernst, or not Ernst, Horst. Their numbers are cut. They're just their acting. And of course, he brought their ages down by like half, but that's another topic. So when you get to the movie, if it's not a number that takes place in the Kit Kat Club, it is not present. It is not there. So that's why you have a limited number of songs in the movie, and that is why they started adding songs.
So in other words, Bob Fosse just grounded the musical, so that way the music is coming from the club, because that's where the orchestra is inside the club.
Yes. So that was one of the things he was going for, was trying to ground that idea, because this is the first musical that does that. This is the first music. This is a musical of many firsts. This is the first modern musical that got rid of the orchestra. This is the first modern musical where it brings this type of connection of stage and show. Gypsy, yeah, those are still more in the moment storylines that took place that's a different podcast. But to have real life mirrored in this fashion, like Chicago does. Chicago does a beautiful rendition of that. Another Fosse show. But so that was his first rendition of that, and that's what he wanted to do with the movie. That is why they had to add some numbers. Again, for the movie, they wanted Liza and Joel Grey to have a moment, so they wrote the Money Song. Liza had her song, so she brought that in. I do have to clarify, I did misspoke earlier. Mine Air was in the original broadcast was in the original Broadway production of it. But again, there's just so many changes that happen through each and every show. To have your head wrap around all these changes, it's so crazy. I think the Money Song is kind of like the perfect representation of that. How it was a completely different word instrumental track to what it is now. I think that speaks to the times in which these shows were revived. This show is dark. It talks about sex, homosexuality, intercourse without being married, roommates when you're not married. It has the Nazis. It has death. It has abortion. Whew. So the 60s took a lot of that out because you couldn't talk about it. You couldn't talk about homosexuality like that. So, that is why the MC, it was originally two ladies, because that was their way of getting away of talking about that. Cliff was totally in the closet. Like, he was like, there was not even a rainbow in his closet in the original 60s. And then you get to the 98 production where that door is just so full of rainbows that he has to come out. the whole Sally Bowles with the abortion. It wasn't really brought up until the 80s. The MC had his liberation in the 98. I mean, the 80s rendition, he was still a little prim and proper. It wasn't
Well,
until when
the
Alec,
80s was also still Joel Grey. Joel Grey came back and did it in 87.
yep,
20 years after he did the original.
yep. And, he even still won some awards because, I'm now looking at my, he wasn't nominated for the Tony, but he did win for the Drama Desk Award for Outstanding Actor in a Musical in 1988. Again, playing the same role. So it wasn't until when Alan Cumming took the role where they kind of just blew up that building that he was hiding in, and they're like, honey, let's get him a drag queen as a partner and two ladies. And that is where you get the suspenders that were here, there, and everywhere. And again, in 98, we were able to really explore those topics. You couldn't back then.
Right.
And even the way that they ordered the numbers, what numbers were included really changed how they presented the story. This is one of the really hidden reasons why I love this show is, you go see like a show like Oklahoma. You know what you're seeing. It's the same show every single time. When you see Cabaret, it doesn't matter what production you're seeing. It's kind of like seeing it for the first time. Exactly. Because there are so many little changes. You all of a sudden go, I always think of when I listen to this soundtrack with Alan Cumming and Tasha Richardson, we're Sitting Pretty. If Sitting Pretty was in this recording, Sitting Pretty would probably be my number one song. I love that song. But again, it's just not present in this recording. So really, if you can listen to all the renditions. Judi Dench is the London version. I love again
in the original London.
Yes, as Sally Bowles. We talked about Natasha Richardson and how she did a brilliant job of, in 98 being entertaining, but not being, like Judy Garland or Liza Minnelli. Liza Minnelli, when she did it, she brought it as she's perfection, which she is. That movie deserves all the awards it won. I'm not the biggest fan of the movie because they did change and move things around so much for me, but I do still enjoy the movie. But Judi Dench. Wow. Again, when I listened to these soundtracks before, when I was the MC, I was focusing on something different. But to actually listen to Judi Dench do this, again, perfect example of how you can perform a song, be entertaining, but showcase how you're not talented. And that's no disrespect to Judi Dench or Natasha Richardson. That's talent. You're talented enough to not be good. That's talent to me.
Now, it's funny with this show because if you were to take, and this is my random thought on the show, if you were to take the ending of this show or sort of like the middle of this show and start another production that we were both in, it's almost like in the same timeline. So the production that I'm referring to is Bent. So Bent takes place in a club. Well, the first couple of scenes takes place in a club. And it's very, very eerily similar to what happens with Cabaret, where you have a character that's like, look, I need money. I'm going to sell you out. I'm sorry. Y'all better run. And I'm like, whoa. So in essence, you have Cabaret and then you have Bent that are very like next to each other. Hell, you can even throw in Fiddle on the Roof, because that's very, very like almost the Sound of Music is very like they're all in the same time frame. And you're just like, whoa, that's ridiculously crazy. So, on a scale of A plus to F, what would you give this show, Sean?
Well, you're asking me, so I have to give it an A at least. You know, if we're talking about this soundtrack and this production specifically, I think a solid A would be good. You know, amazing characters, well-rounded characters that aren't perfect. You know, from a character perspective, it has all of that. You know, Sally is a faulted character that you're cheering for, but at the same time, you're like, you know, these characters are all likable, and because of that, the sadness of it hits hard. It hits hard. And to me, having really well-rounded characters really brings the story to life. You know, I think it's one of the reasons why Diary of Anne Frank, talking about shows in this genre in this time period, you know, those are all characters that you love. You love those characters, and to see all the brightness in them, to see that glimmer of hope that that On still has, and then to just see it just get taken away. I mean, again, we know what happens, but to be able to get lost in the story and to be like, oh, beep, wow. So I think character-wise, this has some really juicy characters. Song-wise,
oh, go ahead.
Oh no, so we're gonna dissect why I gave it an A. What are your thoughts on the characters, like overall?
I usually do all this in my final moments, which I will get into later. But I would say that my grading for this, I'm going to give it a B plus, only because there is still a lot with this musical that it just feels like it's been piecemealed together. I mean, especially the revival, because like you said, things have been rearranged and changed around so much that like when you listen from the original to the revival, you're like, wait, what is going on? But I still feel like it's still a work in, I don't want to call it a work in progress. I still feel like there could still be some more tweaks to it and just go from there.
Yeah, I agree. You know, one of the other reasons why I love this show and why I give it an A is because of the storyline. You know, again, this was the first modern musical to get rid of the orchestra. It's the first modern musical to really bring in that dual storyline of real life club performance stage. The storyline is very impactful. But I do agree. I guess that's maybe why I won't give it the plus. Is it is very patchy. You know, it's trying to cover a lot. You know, there's a lot to cover, especially when you get to songs like where the MC, if you could see it through my eyes, you know, you have to comment on the money. You have to comment on Jewish relationships. You have to comment on this, on that. There's a lot packed into this show, where I think it does a good job of getting all those storylines kind of wrapped up. It can be overwhelming.
Exactly. Well, I got a question for you, Sean. Then, just to sort of wrap up everything, what would be your final thoughts on the show in general?
I think one of the themes that I love about this show, coming from the main character's perspective, so this is going directly to the MC and to Sally, more so than the others, is that you have to live your life. You know, you can't be afraid, you can't be scared. and it's okay to have those emotions, but it's really just kind of, you have to live your life to the fullest, because you don't know what's going to happen. Um, and to bring to make sure to always bring your sparkle, your most authentic self, which I think this show really kind of teaches me, is to be your most authentic self. I paint my fingernails green. If anyone asks why, I say I think it's pretty. you know this is who I am, and this is who I'm going to be. And I think all these characters I think they try their best. And sometimes there are things that are happening in the world you can't control. Um, so to me, that's what I get from this show, is self-appreciation, self-love. You have to love yourself, and be happy with yourself so you can live your most authentic self, and find love.
All in a nutshell, pretty much. Well, Sean, thank you for talking cabaret with me. Audience, I will give my final thoughts in just a moment. Sean, it's been great talking with you, buddy.
Yes, thank you again. I shared this with you before we started filming this. You know, this podcast reintroduced me to a lot of the things that I love about the show. It's a great reminder of, the history behind this show, um, the history that this show created, and the impact it had on the musicals we listen to today. It was a great little reminder of why I love it. So thank you.
No problem. And in just a few moments, I'll give my final thoughts. So stay tuned.
Bye.
Kenny's final thoughts. All right, my final thoughts. This is where I give my opinion on the musical that we have just discussed, and then using a 5-star grading scale, break the musical down into 5 different categories: music, story, comedy, drama, and replayability. Finally, I will give it an overall letter grade with the help of opera singer Marsé Alaundra. Now, Cabaret is a very good musical that covers a lot of ground in terms of World War II and the effects in Germany. The show is deep, the show is difficult, but it is definitely a musical to watch and listen to. So I'm gonna go ahead and break it all down. Music, I'm gonna give it 4 stars. Candor and Ebb, you can't go wrong. Story, definitely 4 stars. This story is, it's so rough to watch, and how it goes in and out of the Kit Kat Club, where the Kit Kat Club is more like this fantasy world, and then everything else is the reality, and then how the two sort of mesh together towards the end with the Nazi party just coming in and taking over. It's comedy. I'm gonna give it 3 stars. There are funny moments, but they're all with the MC. And some of the funny moments can even be directorial choices. So yeah, comedy, 3 stars. Drama, I'm definitely give it 4 stars. The show opens up with such a high number, and then by the end of the show, the audience is left like, so what happens next? Is this just the end of these people? I need to know. The drama is very, very amped up in this one. And with the inclusion of the Nazi party and the background of World War II, it's, yeah, drama, 4 stars. Replayability, I'm going to give it 4 stars as well. there are a lot of memorable songs in this show. There are a lot of iconic songs in this show. Maybe this time, the money song, the opening number, the title song, Cabaret. There are so many iconic songs that are in this show that, yeah, replayability, definitely 4 stars. Now, overall, I'm gonna have to give the show a B. It is definitely worth a listen to, and I highly encourage it for you to listen to it. So, Marsé, give me that B, honey. Beautiful. Now, Cabaret opened November 20th, 1966 at the Broadhurst Theater. It then transferred to the Imperial Theater and then transferred to the Broadway Theater before closing September 6, 1969, after 1,165 performances and 21 previews. That's the original production. The revival lasted a lot longer than the original. Now, I will say this. The original production was directed by Harold Prince. If you don't know that name, then do you really know musicals? Now, the rights for this show is owned by Concord Theatrics, and there are actually 3 different versions you can produce: the original 1966 version, the revised 1987 version, and the revised 1998 version. You can even produce the actual play that the musical is based on, I Am a Camera. Now, all those links will be below. Now, next week, I have a very special episode. It is what I call the Fierce Family Reunion, where myself and 3 of my Frostburg theater family will be talking about our favorite musicals. Until next time, and as always, stay amazing, you beautiful creature. Take care. Thank you for tuning into The Whole Note. The Whole Note is recorded at Roxy Regional Theatre in Clarksville, Tennessee. Intro and outro, The Bumble by Joshua Pyron, and was inspired by The Flight of the Bumblebee. Grading scale notes sung by Marsé Alaundra. This podcast is edited and produced by me, Kenneth L. Waters Jr. Tune in next week and discover a new musical. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, stay amazing, you beautiful creature.